Susan comes up.
Okay, so welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet, Wednesday, 18th of November 2020. Whilst members are joining the meeting virtually, they are able to fully participate and vote on matters for consideration. This meeting has been live streamed, but before we consider the business of today's agenda, I will ask all Cabinet members and scrutiny members to introduce themselves in turn. So I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Ali. I'm Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Resources and Core Services. Councillor Millard.
I'm Councillor Danny Millard. I am Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Inclusive Economic Growth. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Padder. Do we have Councillor Padder?
Does not like we have chair.
No. Okay, so we'll go into Councillor Shaheen now.
Councillor Farooq Shaheen, Cabinet Member for Living Healthy Lives.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Councillor Rajbir Singh, Cabinet Member for Skills and Employment.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Good afternoon. It's Councillor Jackie Taylor, Cabinet Member for Sustainable Transport.
Thank you. Councillor Underhill.
Councillor Joyce Underhill, Cabinet Member for the Best Start in Life.
Fantastic, thank you. And our scrutiny chairs are also joining us today. So we've got Councillor Luke Giles.
We don't seem to have Luke Giles on.
We don't have Councillor Luke Giles, so we've got Councillor Moore.
Hello, Councillor Paul Moore, Chair of the Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Priest.
We don't appear to have Councillor Priest.
Councillor Priest and Councillor Rollins.
And we don't appear to have Councillor Rollins.
Okay, well, thank you for all those that are here and joining us. So let's move on to the agenda. Apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Crompton, Councillor Alcock and Councillor Elaine Giles. Any other apologies?
No other apologies.
No, okay, fantastic. Thank you. Members to declare any interest? Do you have any members who wish to declare any interest? So we've just received a note to say that Councillor Padder will be joining us, but he's slightly running a bit late, so we'll welcome him once he arrives. On the question of members' interest, does any member have any interest to declare for this meeting? No? Okay, so the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October 2020 are presented. I move them as a correct record. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Fantastic, okay. Are they approved?
Aye.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Additional items of business. Do we have any additional items of business to consider today?
No, Chair.
Nothing? Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so the first agenda item is the Black Country Enterprise Zones Governance Principles, and that'll be presented by myself, so I'll get that summed. So for instance, so the report in relation to this is the 4 Black Country Councils approved the formation of the Black Country Executive Joint Committee in 2013, granting it the function and powers to administer the Growth Deal programmes. A collaboration agreement formally agreed the roles and functions of the Black Country Executive Joint Committee and set out how the 4 Black Country Councils and the Black Country Consortium would work together. The Black Country Executive Joint Committee has delegated authority to act as a decision-making body for these programmes. In 2019, the National Local Government Assurance Framework required a single accountable body for all the debt funding. Walsall Council was accepted as a single accountable body, and the collaboration agreement was amended to reflect this following the agreement by the 4 Black Country local authorities. Walsall, in its role as a single accountable body, has brought the Wolverhampton and Walsall Enterprise Zones together as a Black Country Enterprise Zones and has created a detailed governance principles paper setting out the governance, operational and monitoring agreements. Specific to the Black Country Enterprise Zone is the governance principles are agreed by the Black Country local authorities and they will be incorporated into the Black Country Collaboration Agreement. Sandwell Council does not currently have any enterprise zones, which means that a significant part of the governance principle do not actually apply to Sandwell. However, these do still benefit Sandwell from accepting the governance principles as they allow business rates surpluses from the enterprise zones to be used across all 4 Black Country local authorities. 2 main ones will stand are: number 1, all Black Country local authorities will have access to a revenue budget up to £250,000 per year for the next 5 years. The aim of the revenue funding is to fund the development costs of key Black Country sites, so that when funding does become available for the scheme, local authorities are ready to apply for funding.
Can we just pause, Chair?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, we appear to have a technical issue that we're just looking into at the moment. If you could just bear with us for a few seconds.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Chair. You can continue.
Thank you. So following from where I was, so the second point in relation to the benefits are the Black Country local authorities can borrow approved priority capital projects for named sites mapped out as part of the Black Country pipeline. The burden of borrowing costs would be funded by future business rate uplifts from the Black Country enterprise zones. It should be noted that the funding of borrowing costs is number 7 of 7 on the proposed priorities orders cost. The governance principles also highlight the risk of the Black Country enterprise sites not generating the forecast surplus, which could result in borrowing costs being recovered over a longer period than forecast and potentially not completely recovered. In summary, by accepting the Black Country enterprise zone's governance principles, Soundwell Embassy will have the opportunity to determine if it is to be beneficial to access additional funding generated from the Black Country enterprise zone business rate uplifts for the development of key sites within Sandwell. The recommendation is noted in the report, so I wish to recommend the report to Cabinet. I'm happy to take any questions. No questions. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to the Chief Executive. So at this point, just want to introduce that Councillor Iqbal's joined us on the Cabinet call as well. I know that he had some difficulties logging in. Welcome, Councillor Padder. I'm going to hand over to Chief Executive to do a roll call on the vote.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Padder, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
4.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Fantastic, thank you. So everyone's voted in favour and the report's been accepted. Direct payment support, service payment and variation to contract. Can I ask Councillor Shaheen to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you. This report seeks approval for a payment to be made to the contract holder, Ideal for All, to cover additional reasonable costs over and above the original contract value incurred by the provider. These additional costs are a direct and an unavoidable result of the Council's requirements to undertake a recent retender at the natural end of the contract to provide support services to people with adult social care direct payments. Direct payments provide people with flexibility and control of their social care support, and Ideal for All supports this by administrating payments on behalf of direct payment recipients to their personal assistance and care agencies. This report is being brought as the usual provision for delegated authority afforded to the relevant director, in this case the Director of Adult Social Care, to vary a contract in such circumstances was not included within the original Cabinet approval relating to the previous contract dating back to 2015 and running through to the end of March 2020. Officers therefore require an approval from Cabinet to vary the previous contract. And on this basis, I put this forward for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaheen. Do we have any questions? No. Okay. So we'll move to the vote. Chief Executive.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Padder, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
Thank you, Chair. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Everyone's in favour of the report and the report's been accepted. So the next agenda item is Q2 Budget Monitoring 2020-2021. So I'm going to present that report and I'm just going to go some key areas which may be of interest to members. So the projected year-end position at a directorate level, excluding public health, and the housing revenue account is an underspend of £128,000. The position including public health and central items is projected underspend of 1.295 million, although any underspend against public health grant is ring-fenced and has to be transferred into the public health reserve. This excludes the impact on business rates and council tax and some commercial income, which is outside of directorates. The projection includes the use of 14.7 million of reserves and a one-off corporate resource that have been previously earmarked for use by those services. It also includes the use of 13.9 million of COVID emergency fund grant funding. The report and the appendices provide a breakdown of this projection across directors, together with reasons for the variations. In respect of COVID-19, grants of approximately £121 million have been received relating to COVID-19. The majority of these are ring-fenced for specific purposes, and a significant proportion are passported to local businesses and community. Within this amount, 33.1 of unring-fenced emergency funding is available to fund the range of pressures currently being experienced. As outlined earlier, 13.9 million is funding pressures in directorates and against central items. The remainder will be used to fund loss of some commercial income, business rate, council tax income, and delayed delivery of budget savings. There are a number of assumptions and variations in the projections, including there is significant uncertainty about the financial impact of the second COVID COVID-19 wave, which is now taking place due to the restrictions differing from the initial national lockdown. This particularly affects the ability to accurately assess the business rate and council tax collection rates, as it was expected that these would begin to become closer to normal at this point in the year. No costs have currently been included for the changes required to office space for social distancing when more staff return, nor funding for equipment for staff to work from home if it is decided that this will be continued for the long-term basis. Cabinet should be aware that the business rate and council tax income shortfall will impact on the budget 2022 to 23 to 24, as the MHCLG government department have announced that this can be spread across 3 financial years instead of 1. The impact of COVID-19 will therefore continue to create pressures on the council's budget across the period of medium-term financial strategy, and work has been undertaken to estimate the impact this will have on our future funding levels. So in relation to this report, the recommendations to receive the Q2 monitoring position refer to the Budget and Corporate Scrutiny Committee. Note that the current financial position approved certain variations above £250,000 and approved the allocation of £433,000 to the Children's Trust to fund COVID-19 pressures. This is in addition to the £331,000 allocated approved at Q1. Thank you very much. I'm happy to send the report to Cabinet. Do we have any questions on this report? No. So I'd move to the Chief Executive for a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Padden, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Everyone's in favour and the report's been accepted. Thank you. Item 8, West Midlands e-scooter trial zone. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. I'm delighted that Sandwell has the opportunity to trial this new sustainable mode of transport. It's really important that we encourage people to leave their cars at home wherever possible, and this is another way of achieving that. The trial is very controlled and in a small part of the borough, and of course we know that potentially issues will arise, as we have seen in other parts of the region. But I am hopeful that this trial will be a success and will benefit our residents, our air quality and our climate. I'm now going to hand over to Andy Miller to do a short presentation about the report we are considering today.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to share my screen, if you'll just bear with me a moment. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes, I can see that, Andy.
Thank you. Okay, the Sandwell e-scooter trial. So firstly, why are we doing a trial at all? Currently, e-scooters are illegal for use anywhere on the public highway, but there has been a huge increase in the number of e-scooter sales. In July, the government modified legislation to allow the licensed trialling of e-scooters, and we feel that taking part in a trial will help us, as Councillor Taylor has already alluded to, offset an increase in car use when post-COVID. We need to have a better understanding of the implications of using e-scooters on the highway, finding out what works well and what doesn't. And I think it's fair to say that the governments are probably minded to eventually legalise e-scooters. So we need to be able to prepare the government for when this happens. But it's important to stress that for the time being, privately owned e-scooters remain illegal on the public highway. There are e-scooter trials taking place in 14 locations around the country at the moment, including in Greater Manchester, Liverpool, Teesside, and in other parts of the West Midlands. Birmingham and Coventry already have trials. Solihull, Walsall and Wolverhampton are due to commence trials in the coming months. So who is doing the trial? Well, the chosen operator is Voi. They were procured through a full process by Transport for the West Midlands, so they'll be carrying out all of the trials within the West Midlands area. They're a Swedish micro-mobility company. Currently, they've got 45 schemes operating across Europe. And they're also doing trials in other parts of the UK, Liverpool, Northampton, Bristol, Cambridge. But they will have a dedicated team within the West Midlands. The proposed rules of the trial, these scooters can only be used if they are hired from Voi, and they can only be used in the defined trial zone. Users have got to be 18 or over, and they must hold a valid driving licence, which can include a provisional licence. The scooters will only be able to be used on the carriageway, so not footways, and they can only be used on roads with a 30 mile an hour or lower speed limit, along with the West Bromwich Parkway, and they'll be limited to 10 miles per hour. At the outset, the scooters will be dockless, which means they can in effect be parked wherever they are left, providing they follow parking standards. But once the operator has established where people are leaving scooters, they will then look to start installing docks. The charge for the scooters will be £1 to unlock it, and then 20 pence per minute, which is equates to £12 per hour. This is what the scooter looks like. Just to show you some of the main points of it. Just mention the fact that it does have a bell for warning people, and it's got a GPS component in, which is quite important, and it's got that distinctive colour which Voi describe as coral. So the proposed trial zone is in West Bromwich. It was chosen because it gave us a viable area to trial the scooters, whilst giving us some defined safe boundaries to it. It's got quite good transport links. It provides links from the Civic and Retail Core to Dartmouth Park and along the Metro line, both out to Black Lake and to the Hawthorns. And the trial zone will be geo-fenced. What this basically means is that GPS tracking is used on the scooters, and if a scooter is taken out of the trial zone, the motor cuts out. Also, if the scooter is taken into a no-ride area, the motor will again cut out. So, trial zone boundary, this is with the company in the report. It's West Bromwich Town Centre out as far as Trinity Way and Claypit Lane, using the expressway as a northern boundary, and the southern boundary isn't quite as easily defined, but it's mainly to cut out the major roads. As you can see in that area, a lot of that area is already subject to a 20 mile an hour speed limit. And finally, what are the next steps? Assuming Cabinet approves the launch, we will carry out engagement with key stakeholders prior to the launch. That's people like the police, the Business Improvement District, groups that represent local mobility impaired and so on. We will test the operation of the scooters to make sure that the geofencing is working properly in the run-up to the launch, and we do still need to agree the live launch date. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'll hand back to the Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy. Any questions?
We've got a question from Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. It's well known and researched that cost is a significant barrier to participation and activity. I am concerned that the scheme will not achieve modal shift amongst those in the most deprived communities, and actually for many that this will be a scheme that's unaffordable. Now there is some mention of an unlimited monthly pass at a cost of £10 per hour, but it is unclear how somebody would actually qualify for this rather. So I would like to know how the e-scooter trial will ensure that those in the most deprived communities can actually access the scheme.
Councillor Moore, thank you for your question. Section 9.2 of the report actually acknowledges that the proposed tariff is just as Andy Miller had explained, 20 pence per hour, 20 pence per minute, which is £12 per hour. And that it's more than likely to prove a barrier for individuals from low income households. And this is pertinent to West Midlands, West Bromwich and the trial that's going to take place. It's of concern to me. Elsewhere, VOI has proposed a VOI for all scheme, which offers actually unlimited £10 monthly pass for low-income individuals. In addition, in its other trial areas, VOI has also introduced a VOI for Heroes scheme, which gives National Health Service workers on submission of a valid ID free access to scooters. It is hoped that should there be a national approach to e-scooters following the trial, and with more uptake throughout the region, e-scooter hire may become less expensive. However, the charging through the trial is non-negotiable. I'd like to move the report and hand back to Councillor Ali. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move to the Chief Executive for the vote. Roll.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
For.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain. For. Councillor Padder, for, against or abstain. For. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
For.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain.
For.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
For.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
Councillor Underhill.
Councillor Underhill, your mic's off.
I may have lost Councillor Underhill. Okay.
It's
Still off.
still off.
Councillor Underhill, is your microphone off? Yeah, we'll have to continue that.
Okay, that's 6 votes for, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And everybody's in favour. The report has been approved. The next agenda item is actually, in fact, Councillor Underhill for the Sandwell Children's Trust Annual Review 2019-2020, where if she's not, unless she comes back, we'll continue to the next report.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Awesome. Okay, well, just in time. It's your report now. Councillor Underhill. Do you wish to go back on the vote? Yeah.
Could we just confirm, Councillor Underhill, whether you're for, against, or whether you're abstaining on the...
Item 8.
Yeah, 4.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Underhill, over to you for item 9. Sandwell Children's Trust Annual Review 2019-2020.
The service delivery contract that's between the Council and the Sandwell Children's Trust requires that an annual review of the services is completed and presented to Council. The Trust has got 15 key performance indicators that it has to actually meet. 10 have improved or been maintained above their target. 3 have remained the same and 2 have declined. This is actually an improvement on the previous year's performance, where 8 areas improved and 7 declined. Details of the 15 indicators are in the body of the report, starting at page 189. The Department of Education carries out 6-monthly reviews of the Trust and was satisfied in its visit of the 17th of September that progress was being made. The reviews are actually attended by myself, the Chief Executive, and the Executive Director of Children's Services. The Chair of the Trust and their Chief Executive attended the Children in Education Scrutiny Board on the 20th of July and were questioned extensively on the Trust's performances. Although this annual review doesn't cover the period of the COVID pandemic, I must report to Cabinet the close way the Trust and the Council have worked together, with staff adapting to different ways of working, yet continuing to improve performance. The recommendations on pages 186 to 187, A, B, C, D and E, will ensure that the council meets its responsibilities as set out in the service delivery contract, and the governance arrangement between the council and the trust is both robust and purposeful. So I ask Cabinet please to accept the annual review report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Underhill. Do we have any questions?
No hands up, Chair.
No? All right, so we'll move to the vote. Chief Executive.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain? 4. Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain? 4. Councillor Padda, for, against or abstain? 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain? 4. Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain?
4.
Unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you everyone who voted in favour and approved the report. So item number 10, Heat Networks, appointment of contractor to complete detailed project development. Councillor Millard, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval to appoint an external contractor to undertake a detailed project development and to produce an outline business case for 2 potential heat networks. Heat networks have the potential to support our climate change ambitions in Sandwell, and at the same time help address the fuel poverty issue, and that all contributes to the council's vision of 2030. This report specifically requests permission to appoint Greenfield Nordic Limited to work on possible schemes in West Bromwich and Smethwick. And it also seeks authority to delegate to senior officers the appointment of a separate contractor to complete any legal work if there is any required. What heat networks can do is provide a different way of supplying heat as an alternative to a gas boiler. They can help by reducing carbon emissions, and they can make use of a renewable energy source that can take advantage of recovered heat from the industrial process. And bear in mind we are in Sandwell and we have a lot of industry. And now, with a move away from gas and individual boilers, it's important that the council considers alternative ways of supplying heat and power to residents and businesses across the whole of the borough. At the same time, we get to address high carbon emissions and climate change. The concentration of domestic properties manufacturing in all the industries in Sandwell make it an ideal place for heat networks. At a local level, the development of heat networks can also provide that social value, together with the substantial inward investment, job creation, reduce energy costs for businesses and residents. In addition, heat networks can demonstrate a firm commitment towards achieving that carbon reduction and trying to hit our climate change initiatives. So in summary, I like a summary. Potential benefits of the heat network are reduced carbon greenhouse gas, reduced waste sent to landfills. It contributes towards the circular economy, so recycling waste, etc. It contributes to inclusive economic growth, which of course is my cabinet position. It can and should offer a discounted energy to help save money on fuel bills and alleviate this fuel poverty issue that in such a thriving country that we live in, we shouldn't be having families anywhere suffering from fuel poverty. It's a real shame that we still do. It'll create jobs to cover construction and afterwards to deal with the servicing and maintenance. But at the same time, it'll also attract new businesses to the borough. So it's a real positive step forward for Sandwell. I recommend that the Cabinet approve the report, and that subject to the satisfactory contractual documentation, the officer has arranged to appoint Greenfield Nordic Limited at the earliest opportunity. Thanks, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Millard. I understand we have a question. Councillor Moore, you indicated.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. I do support the principle of the scheme, but I wonder if Councillor Millard could give a bit more detail about what would actually be involved in the installation of such a scheme if it became a fully funded project. Presumably, if you're going to install a heat network, that could involve digging up roads, pavements, and so forth. And I wonder if you could elaborate as to whether there are any other councils in England and Wales who are actually pursuing similar schemes or indeed already have schemes installed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. I appreciate your support on this. The construction of heat networks, it can cause a little bit of disruption. There will be some digging up of roads, but these will all be considered during the detailed project development. And where we can try and do it, we'll do what's called like a soft dig. So it'll be using grass verges and canal towpaths rather than creating those issues on roads that none of us really want. In terms of other authorities using the heat network idea, Coventry, Nottingham, Sheffield, Exeter, Leeds, they're all currently under construction around there. And actually they're in operation in other boroughs like Leicester and Birmingham. I understand that Solihull is planning to construct a new town centre network from 2022. And also I believe that Wolverhampton, Stratford, Redditch and Bromsgrove are also looking at the same opportunity. So we're all pushing forward and trying to make this climate change difference. So thanks for that.
Thank you to you both. So we'll hand over to the Chief Executive when we vote.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Padda, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you, Chair. It's a unanimous vote.
Fantastic. Thank you all for voting in as well. So the report's been approved. So we'll move on to item number 11, which is West Smethick Park Heritage Lottery Funded Restoration Programme. And I'll be presenting this report on behalf of the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods. So Sandwell Council were awarded £4.6 million towards an overall £5.2 million improvement programme for West Smethick Park. This includes a new pavilion alongside with various historic features, including renovation, included a chance memorial, a re-landscaping of the park. This investment will provide a centrepiece park for the whole of Sandwell to enjoy. The new pavilion operators will deliver a huge range of activities and events that will meet with the needs of the whole community. The council are now in a position to award the contracts for these works. However, capital costs have increased since the grant was awarded due to, number one, the original contract going to administration. Number two, certain materials and labour costs have increased across all construction projects. Number three, an inflation effect on the original budget estimate of between 8.5% and 10%. And number four, COVID-19 costs within the tender returns, additional equipment, staff and time delays have increased the budget. This report requests that the reallocation of resources of £581,000 currently in the capital programme for and the use of £92,777 of existing section 106 monies specifically for West Smethick Park to fund the increased capital cost of the project. And I recommend this report to you. This is a fantastic investment for Smethick and will complement other existing programme developments, including the new hospital and the aquatic centre. I'm happy to take any questions.
I think it's a question for Councillor Moore, Chair.
Councillor Moore, I have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ali. I'd just like a little bit further detail, please, about the reallocation of resources from the capital programme. Just mentioned that this was funding set aside originally for car parking in West Bromwich. I just wonder if you could explain a little bit more about what that was actually set aside for and why that's not been pursued going forward. I do agree with you that it's important that we do complete this particular scheme and that we do continue to invest in our parks and open spaces.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Moore. So capital funding was set aside to deliver additional car parking capacity in West Bromwich Town Centre. The money identified of West Bromwich Town car park is not linked to the Bull Street demolition. The funding was part of a capital funding set aside to deliver car parking around Highfields and other office quarters. The majority of this car park has now been provided, and given changes in the parking demands, it is no longer considered necessary to hold this funding to provide further parking in that locality. So we'll move on to the vote. Chief Executive.
Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Padda, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
Thank you, Chair. Unanimous.
Thank you. The agenda has been accepted. So number 12, School Model Pay Policies 2020-2021, and that will be covered by Councillor Underhill. Councillor Underhill, over to you.
Right, thank you. The purpose of this report is to recommend to Cabinet the September 2020 pay award and seek approval for the unattached teachers pay policy 2021 and the model schools pay policy 2021. The DFE, Department of Education, issues the school teachers pay and conditions document to local authorities on an annual basis. It places a statutory duty on organisations who employ teachers to have a pay policy in place by the 1st of September each year. The September 2020 pay award has been agreed nationally, so I recommend to Cabinet that we actually approve this. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Underhill. Do we have any questions? No. So we'll pass into Chief Executive for the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Padda, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you for approving that item. So the item 13, foster carers leave policy, and I'll be taking that item agenda. So Sandwell Council was awarded, sorry, wrong one. Sandwell Council is committed to being a fostering friendly employer and wants to support employees who are already foster carers and to encourage those who may be considering foster care to take the next step. There are currently around 78,000 children in care in the UK. The highest proportion, 72 of those children are in foster care, with a child coming into the care system and in need of a foster family every 20 minutes. Therefore, a foster's carers leave policy has been developed, which aims to provide pay time off for foster carers to attend training sessions, review meetings and assessments. In addition, the Council recognises that foster carers need to be able to respond flexibly, need to be flexible to the needs of the child in their care, and that enabling them to work flexibly will help them to balance their work and caring responsibilities. This policy also ensures that foster carers have the same access to our flexible working scheme as parents, and be recognising fostered children as dependents, as the Council will assist foster carers in providing a stable, secure home for children they care for. The Council recognises by having a foster carers leave the policy in place may make the vital difference in the decision of an employee to be able to become a foster carer. I recommend this report to the Cabinet. I'm happy to take any questions. We have no questions, so I'll pass over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ali, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Millard, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Padda, for, against or abstain. 4. Councillor Shaheen, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Singh, for, against or abstain.
4.
Councillor Underhill, for, against or abstain.
4.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor, for, against or abstain.
For.
Thank you, and thanks for accepting the report. Last agenda item, minutes of the Cabinet Petitions Committee. So can we note the minutes of the Cabinet Petitions Committee held on the 16th of September 2020? Councillor Moore.
I hope you don't mind me raising a point, Councillor Ali, on this particular item. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the committee, but point 3, residents of the Hateley Heath area requesting that the SAPA building or former SAPA building be brought back into use. I would appreciate it if perhaps Cabinet members could go away and give a bit of urgency to this particular item. It's a building that's been boarded up in my own ward, right in the middle of Hateley Heath Estate, for 2 years and 3 months now. And I really would like to see a resolution to the matter. So I'm not particularly expecting an update on it here at the meeting, but I would be grateful if somebody could perhaps try and give a bit of urgency to the matter.
No, that's fine, and thank you, Councillor Moore. So, as you may know, I chair the committee, so what I'll do, I'll get into contact and we can have a further discussion around that particular item. Is that okay? Councillor Moore,
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much. So, again, can we note the minutes of the Cabinet Petitions Committee held on the 16th of September 2020? Thank you very much. And with that in mind, I'm happy to close the meeting. Thanks so much for all attending, and we'll see you on the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.